Greetings, everyone. We are recording on Sunday, June 6, 2021, and I am your host, Sean. Joining me today are co-hosts Zach.
Hey, everyone.
And Rob.
What's up?
You're listening to episode 6 of the 4for4 podcast. This is a weekly podcast where we take a deeper dive on 4 select shows from the current anime season and discuss them in 4 episode batches week by week. This week we'll be covering episodes 5 through 8 of To Your Eternity. So this week, not much in the way of news or housekeeping. So is there anything you guys would like to bring to the table before we get started on this week's discussion?
So I believe in the first episode we did for this, I was going to bring up the series composer because I had a pretty grand narrative to give this individual because, frankly, I think he's one of the most interesting men to have ever existed. But we can save that for a dedicated segment if you wish. But other than that, what we got in these batches of episodes 5 through 8, I think there's enough to dig in with that alone.
Sure, and if we have a bit of time at the end, feel free by all means.
Oh, for sure.
Real quick, is there anything you guys want to say about last time? Anything you may have failed to say about the last batch of episodes, or any lingering thoughts from the first 4?
I mean, I don't really have anything, but I've also spoiled myself on the series by reading the manga, so...
Yeah, I will say, like, these past 4 episodes, 5 through 8, I think there's a bit more that I enjoyed, a lot more than episodes 2 through 4, in my personal opinion. So, no, I think there's a slow trend going upwards. So, there's more that I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Okay, so maybe I do have something to say.
Okay.
Just like in regards to the first episode, where I know like a lot of people that are avid anime fans are always like, yeah, try to give like the first 3 or 4 episodes a try, and if you don't like it, drop it after that. And I just kind of feel like this is one of the first animes that is just like, yeah, we're gonna kind of do like even like a mini movie within the first episode, and that first episode is the hook, where there's no waiting to get drawn into this world, and I really appreciate that. You're saving me the time.
Yeah, ironically, though, the first showing was so strong that goodwill alone kind of trucked me through some of what I considered to be weaker episodes. But with that said, like those, episodes 2 through 4, I would say were very necessary for what comes after. And I agree with you, Zach. There is a general trend upward. As I kind of suspected, I think the grander narrative that's forming here is looking to be really interesting. I think the story and plot has a lot of potential.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, with that, let's get into episode 5. Where we last left off, we kind of saw Perona making her escape from her cell, killing, Rob said killing the guard in the manga, but in the anime it's kind of more vague. But she gets out. She grabs Fushi. So last time I referred to him as Orb. I'm going to consistently refer to him as Fushi now. So we see her grab Fushi and March. They're making their way out of Oniguma's cell. But we see at the beginning of this episode that Perona wants to kill Oniguma, or what's left of him. Well, actually, he's already dead, but she wants to take Oniguma's head. And March stops her, saying that you're disrespecting his body, you're disrespecting his legacy. Perona's like, it's just a big killer bear. Like, what are you hoping to accomplish here? She tries kind of dissuading her by like waving toys in her face, but
yeah,
she ain't having any of that shit.
Right. She tried. That's my exact notes. Is March ain't having it. Yeah. She tried to bribe her. Definitely wanted to get that fuck off bear. R.I.P. fuck off bear.
March has formed a really strong, genuine connection with this bear. She's just saying it's being true to its nature, just as I am, and she's come to form a really big connection with this bear. And I think that manifests in a roundabout way with what becomes her eventual connection to Fushi, this connection with Oniguma makes her connection with Fushi all the stronger later on. Because as we see, the gate has opened, that cryptic line from the last episode, it means a lot more in this stretch of episodes. That connection she has with both Fushi and this bear really strengthens her overall connection with Fushi. And that'll make more sense as we get into the next scenes. But yeah, no, I really like this scene. It's just a really small scene that goes speaking a long way for March's character.
I really love the touch they added to when Perona like tries to, like in a sort of condescending way, just tell March you just don't understand because you're still a child.
Yep.
And there's like very visible like shock and like
disappointment.
You feel the insult in March's face.
Yeah, her eyes go blank. She gives.
The thing is, Perona catches this and she's like, "Oh shit! Now, like, I'm turning into
right
like
and,
these."
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh no!
I mean,
I was just gonna finish that thought. It's
sorry. Go ahead, Zach. Like, there's so much to say.
There is. It's Perona not wanting to sort of regress into a very simple single-mindedness that her village kind of went about just with the sacrifices in general, because obviously you can assume it was something that she was told when she was a kid. You just don't understand because you're still a child. Why did we need these sacrifices? It's a very clear parallel.
Yeah, no, exactly. And to call attention to March's facial response, her nonverbal cues. So that's the one thing I want to praise about this episode in particular is the nonverbal cues. Because while this episode kind of has that consistent, irregular, or inconsistent animation quality, I think the nonverbal cues, the emotional cues, animated on the characters' faces was really good, really strong this episode.
I agree. If there's one thing that I can definitely praise this episode for, it's the body language and the emotions conveyed by the facial animations and how their emotions are conveyed, because
they're used one thing devastating effect in this episode.
Right. And I think there's even later on, yeah, I agree, especially because there's a lot of like raw emotion and like a lot of stuff that is elevated due to the production quality. So I think that's worth genuine praise, especially for how enthusiastic I was about the preceding episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like even when Perona gives in and decides not to do that to Oniguma, like you can tell that it's not something that she necessarily agrees with, because you get that close up of her like clenching her fist. Yep. Like, yep. I'm mad, but like I can't,
she
say otherwise.
In the end, she decides to not be what everyone else was to her. She's not going to be that to March. But moving on, they do manage to escape through, I want to say, like a drainage area, through a I think it's donk.
They said sewer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a sewer system.
Yeah.
Got it. And I think they get out with like these donkeys and a carriage. I don't think it was horses, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think they were like mules or something.
Yeah. So they break out with those, and I think at first Perona's driving it, for lack of a better word. She's driving the carriage, but then the ride becomes more rough, and the old lady, who we come to learn her name is Pioran, she takes over riding, and then we start seeing like fire, some smoke coming from the outside. So clearly the carriage is under attack, but the entire time Perona has a very upbeat attitude. She's acting like everything's normal because she doesn't want to scare March. Everything she does is for March, and she wants her to be as calm as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another nice little touch. But we see Hayase and her group of mooks following close behind. Perona's managing to hold them off with bow and arrow, and I think it was the cut-off spear, the shiv she made.
I think she took a spear because she used the cut-off spear as the arrow or bow.
Okay, got it. she's holding them off, and March the entire time is wondering to herself, what can she do to help in this situation? Because now she realizes the carriage is under attack. She's scared, but she also wants to help. And she sees Hayase drawing her arrow to make a shot at Perona, and she instinctively leaps for the arrow and takes it for Perona. And this is where we see Fushi enraged, actually for the first time in the series, really enraged. Because now he has a good understanding of what death is, and I think he instinctively understands that while he may not be able to die, he knows that others can. So he's enraged either way. He leaps for Hayase and the others and basically just starts wreaking carnage on both the soldiers and kind of the surrounding area.
Yeah, not before bitch slapping Hayase.
Yep.
Well deserved. Ah, God, Hayase is such a bitch. I do not like her. I don't.
Hey, if there's one thing this series did well, it's like making that hatred like very justified and
well,
deserved.
I don't even feel like she has any like redeeming qualities. She's just a backstabbing bitch.
She's pure ambition.
Yep.
But yeah, so now this is where we reach probably the roughest part of the episode, where Perona's trying to field dress March. She's trying to save March, but the wound is just completely fatal. She doesn't have long to live. She's bleeding out very quickly. It's also a chest wound, I believe.
Am I gonna die for you, sissy?
Yeah. It's really rough. She tells Perona to become a mommy in her place. She asks if Fu-chan is there. She says, Perona says he is, and this is where March dies relieved. And this is where, also, some of the food that March made for her. I'm not sure what it was. I'm not sure if it was onigiri or more.
Yeah, it was. It was like a little rice ball onigiris.
Got it. Or I wasn't sure if it was like fake food again, kind of like. But yeah, this is where Perona kind of hops out of the back of the carriage, doesn't even tell
Pyoran.
Yeah, yes. She doesn't even tell her. She just hops out of the back of the carriage. She walks over to Fushi, kind of at the end of his killing spree, and she tells him to stop. That
she walks up to Fushi and thanks him because she asks if he's fighting for March, and that does get him to subside from his rage.
Yeah, and this is where we see kind of the mangled wreck that Hayase is now. Perona picks up the end of a blade. Hayase thinks that she's about to finish her off, but this is where she kind of turns the blade on herself, and this is where we see a vision of adult March, and it's kind of returning to that visual language with the boy at the end of his life, where everything's kind of bright and idealized. They're living out their ultimate fantasy of fulfillment, but something brings her out of this, and she's able to see around her the environment around where she died, and she sees her corpse. She's devastated. She says she doesn't want to die, but then she sees Perona about to kill herself, and then she begs Fushi to stop her. And this is where we see her kind of reach through Fushi, because he feels it. He feels the sentiment of what she wants, and he stops Perona from doing the deed and killing herself.
Right, and there's something interesting I want to add to this, because I mean, not only gauging from Fushi's facial expression, like there's the very clear like parallel to like his nostrils are enlarged, like his face is flared with, him being upset. It's very reminiscent of what March looks like. But if there's one contrast, I do like this from episode 1. We see the boy who originally died, and when he saw the culmination of his dream and passed on, he didn't stop to even look around his environment, because it was with the fulfillment of his dream, he accepted it, and didn't wish to move on. And with this next character death of a protagonist, that is anyway, with March, she actually stops and looks around her and considers her dead body and those around her. And I thought it was a very interesting thing to progress with this, because this is only the second time in the series so far where we see a character who's passed away, and we see the what their ultimate dream was. But up until this point, we've only seen the boy pass on. He accepted his death and just moved on like that. But March considered Perona and those around her, and yeah, she pretty much tried to do everything she could to
and I think the thing that brought her out of it, if I recall correctly, everything just kind of crumbled around her, and then she realized she could see the area around where she died. I think the thing that brought her out of it was Perona. So
and we got to think about it from like Perona's point of view. Like, she just lost another sister. She straight up said that she's not tough enough to live in this reality.
Yeah.
Before Fushi stopped her. Fuck, man.
her only goal in life was to protect March, but she failed to do even that. So, I mean, it makes sense that this breaks her. But the sentiment gets through Fushi, though. On some level, I think she understands. They leave. Everyone's attacking them, but they manage to get away. She rides on Fushi's back as he's Oniguma, and over an unspecified amount of time, she directs him back to the village they originally hail from. They return sometime later. She's in a daze, and she's holding what we can assume are the remains of March. I mean, long enough amount of time has passed. It's probably her bones. I have no idea, though. But it is revealed they've been gone for a half a year. She gives March's letter back to her parents, and I say that in air quotes. It's just her handprint, but she relays the meaning. March is doing great, because that's what she originally wanted to say. And this is based on what I said earlier with the facial expressions and the nonverbal cues being so outstanding in this episode. It's easy for them to infer that she's gone, and this is where they break down, but they think everything Perona's done for March.
Right. I don't know about you, Rob, but that fucked me up. Like, as soon as as soon as it hit them that this was all that was left of March, I'm like, oh fuck.
For some reason, for some reason, the first time around it didn't hit me that hard, but the second time I'm like, God damn, that's rough.
Yeah, and it is the facial expression, because like when Perona handed the quote unquote letter to March's parents, like, they wouldn't understand what it is and what the meaning is, but as soon as they looked at the letter and then looked at Perona's face when she was breaking down, like,
they took the meaning.
Yeah, they took the meaning, and that was just very raw.
It's wordless storytelling at its finest, It's very praiseworthy that the animators did for this episode.
Definitely. So, yeah, but they don't have much time to grieve, because first, Fushi, who is right now the giant fuck-off bear, he turns back into his human form, which of course shocks everyone. They're already shocked to see her riding a big bear. This makes everyone even more curious, but they don't have time to really ask about it because they're quickly
She's literally riding their god, dude. Like,
oh yeah, there's a big story there. They're notified the Yaname are coming, and Perona then instructs Fushi to run because they're really just after Fushi. And he's visibly emotionally shaken. He's grown very attached to Perona, but he does what he's told. He takes off in his wolf form, and this is where we kind of are led into the end of the episode, where this was a little confusing to me. Another kind of not optimally composited scene or directed scene. I don't know how you want to say it exactly, but they're kind of
this scene I still get like huge like Mononoke vibes from, though.
Like what happens itself. I meant it's kind of awkward that they're just standing in a very visible watchtower, and it's surprising to me that the Yanome troops and scouts don't notice them just watching on. But anyways, she sees Hayase about to take a shot at Fushi, or we're told she's about to take a shot at Fushi. So she draws her bow and arrow, and she makes the best shot she's made so far in the show, but she's still not able to seal the deal, and she hits Hayase's hand. And then she kind of looks back with a crazy glance. So yeah, and that's kind of where we leave off. Fushi sets out on his journey with March, as the narrator says, in spirit, and gaining humanity in the process. But before we move on, any overall thoughts on the episode? Anything you guys would like to say in general?
Well,
why don't you start, Rob?
We know what we're getting into with the show.
Yeah, there's a pattern's established.
Right. I still feel like it's delivering a decent, faithful adaptation of the manga itself. So, like, I don't have really anything to complain about with this particular episode. Although I do kind of want to put out that we did get a narration about March being Fushi's mother figure. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I would say...
sorry,
go ahead.
At the end of the episode, Fushi did transform into March.
Yes. Sorry, I did fail to mention that. He does take March's form at the end of the episode. So this kind of cements, if it wasn't already easily inferred with the boy and the wolf and the bear, anyone that's left a strong impression on Fushi at their time of death, that was around Fushi or had contact with Fushi, he's able to assume their forms.
Right, and specifically those who have given him like a strong enough stimulation, like as the narrator puts it.
Right.
Because I mean, ultimately, that is the goal of the orb roaming the earth.
Yes.
But of course, more is elaborated on that in episode 8. But yeah, for now, for all intents and purposes, like he assumes the form of those who he's had contact with and have stimulated him. But yeah, no, overall, my thoughts on this episode are very positive. Probably the second best episode up until this point in the series. Again, facial expressions, the body language. I think the animators were on point with conveying the sorrow and raw emotion that these characters are feeling. But yeah, leading into the next episode, you see Fushi kind of tagging along with Pyoran as she's kind of abandoned and left to her own devices in the cart.
Yeah. I don't know. My overall thoughts, I don't have a whole lot more to add. Once again, I think it's exhibiting the greatest quality this show has, which is capitalizing on the emotional investment of its characters. The show does a really good job of using the time you have with its characters, establishing the motivations behind those characters, and really delivering the full gut punch at the end and I mean, I'm pretty sure this is the established pattern now. Someone important to Fushi in every little arc is going to die, and he's going to continue taking on these forms and gaining more and more humanity, not only through his interactions with them, but I think there's a literal, maybe more spiritual aspect of this that he's gaining as well along the way. But yeah, with that, let's move on to episode 6. So, as you said, Zach, we're quickly brought back to Pyoran this episode, but we open with Fushi wandering the wilderness. The narrator says he rarely takes the boy's form, but when he's hungry, he eats his March, and that's when he comes across a familiar scent. And this is where he does run into Pyoran. She's sitting by the carriage at a bonfire, I believe. And this is where she notices Fushi approaching her in March's form. And she's surprised to see her, and she says she's been lost for 3 days and nights, struggling to get by while losing the donkeys. And she's wondering where they've all been. And this is where she noticed that Fushi transforms into his boy's form, I believe, as he wanders into the carriage and sees March's blood. and this is where she knows for sure, oh wait, this is Fushi. And he's clearly mournful over what he sees, but then this is where he walks out. And this kind of starts wandering away, not really paying any mind to the woman because he doesn't really have any sort of attachment to the woman. He doesn't know why he should have an attachment to this woman. So he just walks away. Yeah, any opening thoughts on this scene?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. Probably the first 5 or so minutes, I don't have a lot to really care about. I don't know. I didn't have much in the way of enjoyment with her basically complaining for minutes on end. And I will say there is something like when Fushi assumes the form of March and climbs up the tree and throws down the fruit like March did for him.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very neat little callback, but until they get to the map, I didn't really like rewatching this scene, like this whole portion.
How have the tables turned? I mean, it was just like Fushi's interaction with March 2 episodes ago. Couple points I do want to bring up. Pioran says that she makes the observation that Fushi doesn't have the means to express feelings, and that she wants to see like what's going on within his head. I also kind of want to touch point on how she tried to eat some thigh meat from Fushi, and how we had such light music for attempted cannibalism. I was like, I mean, that's really
it's a very anime thing.
I mean, it was really jovial music. Like, hey, dude, like, let me eat some of your leg meat.
This epitomizes what I think is just anime filler. Like, it truly serves no purpose but to like give humor.
I wouldn't say that, because I think it shows that Pioran, despite her age, is still resourceful when it comes to trying to survive.
Okay, she's still energetic and like sort of has a sense of like emotional immaturity still, to contrast her old age. But I mean,
I don't know if I agree with that. She's an old lady starving, so she's not in the best I think that's
right, but
the tone of the scene's trying to be light because we've been faced with so much darkness and despair. I
think that's my point. It's just the scene is presented with a very like dissonant tone to.
Yeah, it is.
To what's going on,
but.
Oh, and especially when he throws, like when Fushi throws the the fruit to her, and then jumps down and is asking for things. Arigato.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of just a reprisal of the older scene with March doing the same for him. He's parroting that behavior from March because he sees from the woman the same predicament he was in during that time. So he's trying to replicate that behavior. I mean, as innocuous as it is a moment of growth for his character. And as you said, next after this, we see her run across a map in the road, like a signpost. And this is where she takes note that the port or the village that they want to go to is about 100 ri away. We have no idea how far that is, but she says her hometown or where she wants to go is beyond the sea. So they need to get to the port and then they need to take a boat. But we see Fushi fascinated with the paper she pulls out. It's like a roll of paper and like ink. I'm not sure why she pulled out the ink though, because she uses a pencil.
Didn't even consider that.
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
Yeah,
even on my second watch through. Shit.
It's small detail. It is funny though, because after that, when he starts drawing, I do not see the ink any longer nearby. So I'm wondering if it was an animator's error. But anyways, he takes the paper and pencil. He's fascinated. He's drawing on the paper, kind of making these noises that I thought were hilarious. But
they're like grunts, like
he knows nothing of human speech, so
very ooga booga.
Yeah. So Bjorn starts showing him basic characters and how to write, and promises to teach him if he comes with her and takes care of her, air quotes, i.e. becomes her pincushion. That's how I got it. But
okay, so like I just kind of want to interject here. Like,
sure.
What are your guys' thoughts on Piorin? Because like my thoughts at this point is that she's nice, but
No,
kind of fucking sketchy.
my thoughts are, I mean, she's a pure opportunist, and this
Yeah,
becomes even
yeah.
more apparent later on to me. Uh, I mean, I don't think she's like, what's the
I don't
word?
think she's malicious with her
Yes,
intent,
yes, that's what I wanted to say. I
but
don't
I
think she's
agree. But
malicious, but
she's sketchy, dude. She's
sh-
sketchy. I can't
well,
trust her.
for sure. And I mean, ultimately, I have to believe there's a reason she wound up in a Yaname prison. I'm not saying the Yaname are great or anything, but uh, anyways, yeah, no, that's a good thing to bring up. I mean, she's an opportunist. In my eyes, she'll discard Fushi at a moment's convenience. But at the same time, she doesn't seem any harm in teaching him how to be a more effective human being. Because if he's going to be a useful tool to her, he has to know how to act as a human being and get by in society.
Right.
So,
And I mean, this will kind of play a larger part in the next few episodes, but I still
mm-hmm.
stand by my reasoning that I think she has a bit of emotional immaturity because we see a glimpse of this with, I mean, granted, yeah, she was starving, and even though the scene had like a tad bit too much like levity for like for it to sit well with me, I still think it shows when like I won't spoil the next episode, but yeah, her clearly her attachment or how she values other people's lives is not at the forefront of her mind because I agree. I think she's just a pure opportunist. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that plays a part into her emotional immaturity when a certain someone goes off and no one goes after him. But we'll get into that way later.
Yeah. I don't know. I think she's too old for me to actually ascribe it as emotional immaturity. I think she's just, I don't know, maybe you want to call her a sociopath. I don't know. Like,
Either way, I mean, yeah, she's just old. She's an old coot.
that's also probably not the right term I should be using, but I think you understand what I'm saying. But
Yep.
moving on. So her hometown's beyond the sea. They're making the journey there. There's a nice little montage to some acoustic guitar, him learning more words, more vocabulary, learning more about the world. He's clearly enjoying it. He loves learning. That's become very obvious. So, but he
I
learns
really think that's a cool aspect that he's intrinsically like
yeah,
animated when he wants to learn. Like
yeah,
he's communicating better. He okay, god damn it. He's carrying on March's wish of being a grown up.
yep. And he takes to heart to grow up is to learn, and that's a phrase he really comes to value. And he has basic recollections of his earliest memories and the boy. When they do finally arrive to the port, they do employ a boat. He's able to talk, but he's still bad at proper enunciation. He's able to have really basic conversations, though. And this is when they're kind of sailing at night. They come across the nearby coast. They're seeing the glow of a fire on the horizon. And this is where Pyorin makes the observation the Yaname fight like that every day. So we see their influence in the region. It's clearly a violent influence, one based on conquest and strong arming. So they land nearby. She's saying her lover's home is close, but they'll probably be arriving the next evening. They need to rest here, though, for the night. They set up a fire. She does make the note that he's an intellectual and that he might know something about him. So they go to sleep, and this is where we see a root come up from the dirt. But before we get to that scene, anything you guys want to say about what I just talked about?
Sneak attack guaranteed crit.
No, I mean, I'm ready to get into this next part.
Okay. So this is where we kind of reach the set piece of the episode where we see a little root arise from the dirt and we hear the narrator say, "What's this? It seems someone's come to play in my garden." Which leads us to believe, as we could see at the very beginning sequence of the first episode, that the narrator may be taking on more of an active role than just narrator.
Right.
So a fight ensues between Fushi and this root. It stabs Fushi, stealing the boy's core, which we'll come to know it as.
Also, boy, man, when these Blu-rays come out, there's going to be some very disturbing imagery because they blurred his head.
The fact that they censored that pisses me off because
I was going to say, like, that's going to be a badass.
It was so brilliant in the manga, and I'm like, why did you censor that? Like, it wasn't even that gory in the manga.
That's a money shot.
It's a money shot 100%. Like, and I'm so mad that they did that. I
suppose it was a form of censoring. I thought it was more of a stylistic choice.
No,
absolutely
not.
It's completely, like, blacked out.
Well, yeah, I know it was, but I thought it was a stylistic choice because of the way it...
in the manga, that shit was not censored.
I see what you're saying, but the way it contrasted the black against the background.
I mean, I guess, but it really loses its impact of the threat of
the body
this.
Horror.
I mean, I'm not even saying that it's the body horror, but like it just really loses the impact. I feel.
I agree. I'm going to agree with you on this one, Rob, because I think the weight and impact of that blow, you don't see a lot of instances where Ushi like looks like he's like writhing in pain. Like this next scene with like this sentient root in so many words, like you really see him kind of in the most pain he's been in up until this point. And I think it would be so much like accentuated from.
And we see it's clearly more than physical pain.
Right, exactly.
Right. And we don't even have a name for it yet. And God damn it, like I really kind of hope they change the name for it. I'm not going to tell you guys the name.
Well, we'll see what that is. But it is more than physical because we see a glimpse into his memories and a white outline of the boy. Clearly at this point he's forgotten him, but this enrages him because it sticks out like a sore thumb in his memories. He knows he lost something important. And this is where we see time stop briefly as Fushi's creator, the narrator, has now entered the match.
Great music for this scene, by the by.
It's
really, for sure.
It's really well presented. So time stops briefly. He starts giving a bit of information to Fushi. It took a piece from you, and he says to Fushi to win, he needs to fight it. So he says it's designed with the objective of weakening him, and that it's a failure of life incapable of becoming an animal, but it's adept at stealing. So any thoughts before I move on to the rest of the fight?
Oh, absolutely. Like, let me go here. I think that it's really fucking neat that, so Fushi, we understand at this point, he's immortal. He can't die. But at the same point, like, now we have this existential threat that can potentially ruin everything that he's gained within these past however many years of existence. It takes everything from him. It can take everything from him. So now we actually have, like, a legitimate antagonist, a legitimate threat, because, like, let's be real. Hayashi was a bitch. I don't like her.
Hayase.
Will never. Yeah, Hayase, whatever. Fuck that bitch. I can't even... I won't even pronounce her name right. I'm Ron Swansoning this shit. Fuck her. She's not even worth me pronouncing her name right. Like, I do not like her. But now we actually do have, like, a legitimate threat, a legitimate antagonist. So yeah, that's a really neat way to introduce it.
Yeah.
What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I share that sentiment. Like there feels like there's a true threat to Fushi and something to like strive against, because clearly it's the sole purpose of this being that he has to fight is in direct conflict to, Fushi's goal to, Sean, I think you'll bring it up later at the end of this fight, but to give us, the audience, more insight to Fushi's overall greater purpose besides just seeking stimulation and roaming the earth.
Exactly. And the thing that's become most important to him is the memories he's made and the connections he's made not just through his memories, but also those spiritual connections, because you get the impression that he gains way more than just being able to assume their form. There's a deeper connection there, a more spiritual or metaphysical connection. But the fight goes on. It keeps taking his forms until he's down just to march. But as before it took his bear form, he was able to get some damage in and expose the core. So we have a nice little sequence where he's avoiding what root attacks there are. He manages to jump into the gaping wound that the bear left and grab the core. And this is where he kind of yanks it out and he's able to reclaim everything he lost. And we see an expression of profound joy on his face when he reclaims this.
Oh yeah, and by the way, best shot in the entire series up to this point. Such a wonderful, ethereal looking imagery. Like when he squeezes the core and has that sort of aura.
Yeah, you can kind of
flowing
like
past
see
him.
the spirit web around him. Like
it's a very, very captivating sequence.
Mm-hmm. So this is where his maker says they have a sort of grand objective, and that the root he's fighting, whatever it is, it's kind of the antithesis to what he is and their goal. Its goal is to take and to work against their, quote, maintaining of this world, and whatever that means. So he leaves saying, well, Fushi, we'll have fun until the coming end. Bit of foreshadowing there. So they finally arrive at Piorin's lover's home, and she's saying she brought back an immortal freak. And then we see an ending shot of Fushi and Gugu just staring at each other. The boy who we come to learn as Gugu. So yeah, with that, any parting thoughts on this episode?
Sus alert.
Sus alert. Yeah.
Yep.
It's not
Nope.
just
I'm with you there,
either.
Rob. Nope. And I wasn't referring to her either.
Right. So my overall thoughts of this episode is that it's neat again that we have an end objective for the series. We do have now a main antagonist outside of Hayase.
Definitely going to be the recurring force against Fushi, because I'm assuming
right.
he's going to live beyond a single human lifetime. You need to establish a consistent, persistent antagonist for him.
Right, but even like based off of that, like Hayase, I feel is still a threat. I mean, look at them fucking crazy eyes that we got. Like,
oh yeah,
she's not to be discounted.
Oh
she's
no,
not to be discounted.
For the foreseeable future, she is going to be the representative of Yaname's ambition in acquiring him. She's that direct representative for that.
It's not like she could be the main antagonist of the series, because again,
I don't think she is. But she's the human face of Fushi.
Yes,
she is the human antagonist to Fushi. She represents humanity's antagonism to him. And and I think he will become her Moby Dick. That's my personal thought.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this episode is another strong one. This is another one of those that I feel like removing it from the series, you would be missing a lot of necessary information. I think it adds a lot to the narrative and furthering like an objective that I think it's very much needed for this kind of story. So, but yeah, at the end, my sus alerts are going off. So whenever you want to get into the next one,
It's a very predominantly audio-visual episode, but it also is a very important setup episode that gives a lot of important context behind what Fushi is and his place in the world.
For sure.
Okay. But with that, let's take a quick break and then we'll finish out our episode discussion. All right, so we begin episode 7 with a shot of a boy who we come to quickly know as Gugu. So he's going to sell produce at the local market for his boss, and this is where we see him notice a girl that he'll come to know as Reen. This is where we see one of the aforementioned sus individuals. I'll just call him Gramps. He stops by wanting seeds, but Gugu says he doesn't have it. He'll ask his master later, though, and we see Gramps walk away with a screaming boar on his back, and the guy nearby says he's a brewer up on the hill involved in illegal business. So kind of first red flag there. Gugu comes back to his bro's place, I say in quotes, as some of the other boys his age walk away. And I say boys his age, I'm talking about his bro, because he's a bit older than Gugu. I want to say he's in his mid to late teens probably. So this is where Gugu notices some money missing from their stash. They live in pretty clear squalor. It's like a very crude tent, like not even completely covered tent, just enough to mostly protect it from the elements, but not even fully.
Right. I mean, you can tell just at a glance that these boys are. I mean, no
They're on
guardians. No. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I mean, they're so destitute that, like, even at the beginning of this episode, like, Gugu has an existential crisis at his age, and just like, wait, what?
Yeah, I mean, he and his bro, air quotes, they're fending for themselves.
Shin.
They have to grow up quick, or, you starve. You have to work to eat. So, back to what I was saying. He notices some money missing from their stash, and he asks if his brother took any. And he asks about his friends, maybe they took some. And then this is where his brother gets angered at his accusations, and this is where he kind of just brushes it aside, saying, what is lost is lost, don't let it get to you, which immediately the audience from that knows something's up. Based on kind of the way he conducts himself, and he just brushes aside, like clearly his brother's taking money from him. So he goes to eat a steam bun alone nearby in the woods, and he notices a dog that comes up to him. He gives half the bun to the dog. And the next day we see him bring the dog with him to the market. Maybe someone would notice their dog's missing. And this is where we see the girl from earlier, Reen. She notices the dog because it's her dog. And she thanks Gugu and gives him what we come to learn is a really invaluable ring. Well, I'm not going to say invaluable. It's worth a lot, though. So
you sell this, you never have to sell vegetables in your life again. That's how valuable it is.
Yep. Yeah, he would be set, at least from the standards he's looking for. So he runs back in the evening to tell his brother of the great news. And this is where we find his stash is empty, and we see a letter in it from his bro, leaving behind a note saying he's decided to fight against fate and apologizes to Gugu, and that's it.
Shin took the money and fucking bounced.
Some fucking bro you are.
Right? Fucking bounce. Like, I do not like Shin.
Definitely. Oh, I don't think his name's been revealed at this point, but I guess that's his name. Shin? Shin, you said?
Oh, it has been, yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess
I thought it was.
Okay. So Shin. So Shin took his money. A deep depression understandably falls over him because...
Of course.
I mean, that probably took him months to accumulate that much. So the days go by. He's deeply depressed. He contemplates what he can gain by selling the ring. As he's walking by some not train tracks, but tracks in the evening, a log falls off as a cart is coming by. The conductor of the cart...
I do kind of want to interject here that
Sure.
he contemplated, like, Gugu contemplated suicide, like just running in front of the tracks and ending himself.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because what's on his mind right now is the reason why his bro left. And his attitude towards fate is being, like, heavily put into question here.
I mean, like, let's be real,
I get
though.
crushed
Like,
by this log, will it change my fate?
Or just get crushed by the train track, or, the train, quote unquote train. I mean, let's be real, like, fate is cruel as fuck to Gugu.
Yep.
And he's, like, literally best boy. Like, why?
Basically,
I just
his best boyness is inverse to how much suffering he must endure.
Well, right, because he clearly...
Actually, directly proportional, I meant to say. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, because before the log actually comes and challenges his attitude towards fate, like, he's very quick to, like push those thoughts aside. He's like, what the heck am I thinking? Well, fate kind of has it out for him in a sense when it nearly crushes him and he's visibly traumatized as you do.
Yep. And the conductor, he runs by, he tries pushing the log up, but he says, I need some more help. I'm going to go get help. Watch the log, please. So he runs off, and this is where Gugu notices his crush, Reen, down the hill. And as fate would have it, the log starts moving again. And this is where he starts running ahead of the log to save her. He starts screaming her name. She doesn't seem to notice, though. And right at the last second, he manages to push her out of the way. Unfortunately, not in time enough, though, to prevent himself from getting hit by the log. Hits the back of his head. He tumbles over. There's like a very slight.
How the fuck does she not hear him screaming, yelling down the hill?
That didn't sit quite right with me either. I'm like,
yeah,
at least
I was waiting for her to acknowledge the person that kind of saved her life, but she.
I've got something to say about that because
it's a shitty contrivance.
Yeah, I was gonna say it feels contrived as hell.
To make this scene work, because she has to not know who saved her in that moment.
Right.
For the subsequent scenes to work.
So yeah. Gugu pushes Reen out of the way and takes the damage from this log, right?
Yep.
But we also, at the same point, within dialogue, get to know that Reen is safe and she's conscious. So why the fuck didn't she say anything about the peasant boy that saved her? What the fuck? You're already starting to get on my shit list at this point.
Well, I mean, the way I interpret it was because he does fall off that slight drop off, and the log ends up crushing his face at the very least. But he's still alive. He can at least hear the voices in the background. By what I remember, they're saying she's unconscious and she's wounded. That's what I remember. I don't know if that's exactly.
No, they said that she's conscious. Reen is safe and conscious.
Well, she may have been dazed. Maybe she hit her head.
I mean, I guess, but
I mean, that's what I have to believe to make this even slightly work. So that's what I'll believe. It leaves it vague enough to whatever.
I guess I'm still skeptical. Why the fuck?
I think it's just a not particularly well set up or written scene. But moving along.
That's fine. Let's move along because
that
I did want to bring that up because
it's definitely of note though. Yeah, for sure. So moving on, Gugu awakens on this table some unspecified amount of time later. We see a bunch of blades hanging over his head, and he notices that his belly is sticking out. He's kind of bloated. And he gets down, he sees his face in the mirror, and he's horrified because he is now a monster. At least on the outside. On the inside, he's a precious little ball of fuzz. But
oh yeah, best boy.
But on the outside, things are not looking good. And this is where Gramps walks in, air quotes Gramps. He says, "Your nose is destroyed, but you can still eat. I'm surprised you hung in there considering what you went through."
Booth, man.
Saying it all very cheerfully, as Gugu is clearly mortified. So there's a mask nearby. He adorns this. It's clear to me that Gramps knew what his reaction was going to be. I'm guessing he just set that up because he knew he couldn't walk around with a face like that. So he begins working at the brewery as his servant. And my assumption is to just, repay him for saving his life.
Well, and he said that his dream came true here.
Yeah, because now he's living a way better life, ironically, despite the horrific damage to his face. And we'll learn our other issues later. But
we're 3 months later, and he's like, "Oh, my dreams come true." But we get this odd sense that Booze Man is kind of odd. I do want to kind of
He's an eccentric, to say the very least.
Yes, I do kind of want to...
And possible necromancer, because that seemed like a very lethal injury.
Yes, I do want to touch base real quick about how much I love how they animated Gogu's emotes through his mask. Yeah. It is fantastic.
Yeah, Gugu is very well... It's like an Alphonse Elric thing where you have you don't have a lot to work with a static mask. but the animators took a lot of liberty. I mean, I'm assuming the mangaka did too with the way they drew Gugu, but
Yeah. Thankfully, they were very expressive with
yeah,
the
yeah, they
the
give a
humor
lot of
facial animation.
they give a lot of flourish to it, and I
Can
Yeah.
confirm the manga is just as expressive.
okay. So this is where we see Pyoron and Fushi walk in from where the last episode left off. So this is 3 months after Gugu got his injury, and this is where Pyoron starts showing Fushi to Gramps. And Gramps says he's dumbfounded. You know, he doesn't really understand what Fushi is. This is all unprecedented to him. But, I mean, he takes this in the usual eccentric stride. He's like, huh, that's strange. Anyways, I guess he can stay here, as I'm sure he and Pyorin are thinking about how to best exploit him.
Yep.
So Gugu introduces himself to Fushi, saying he's been there 3 months now. He calls Gramps Booze Man, and he notes that he doesn't have many customers. So that's another small red flag. He notes that Fushi is filthy, and starts, bringing him to the forest, but he's afraid to go in the forest because of the attack from the prior episode. So he kind of takes him to this like small area with the bath. Says he'll get in trouble if they use it, but it's whatever. So starts to pull off his air quotes clothes. It kind of like it's like really organic. It kind of tears off. It's clearly not actual clothing though, because he manifests all this material out of whatever he is. I'm assuming he like transmutes it, but he tears it off, gets him naked, gets him in the bath, and then he gets in to bathe too. But this is where Fushi rips his helmet off to his shame. But I mean, Fushi doesn't really know. He still doesn't really know or understand what humans are. He doesn't have an idea or concept of what shame is. So he sees his face, but he doesn't think anything of it. He says he's ugly. Fushi asks what ugly even means. But he says, we're both monsters. So yeah, what did you all think of this scene?
So, yeah, I mean, kind of leading, like up until this point when Fushi's introduced to Sussman, and afterwards, like up to where they take a bath. I do like, we see Gugu's insecurities. Like, I mean, he wears his emotions on his sleeve, and he's very clearly upset with how his fate turned out. Because, yeah, on one hand, now has a comfortable place of residence, even if Booze Man is like sketch as hell. He still has a place to call home and some semblance of security. But even with that in mind, he knows deep down he can never go back to the life he once had or pursue, what dreams he and his bro had, because, well, now he considers himself a monster with the face he has. But I mean, there's a nice little moment, and the first of a few scenes where he and Fushi sort of bond in a way, because as you said, Fushi doesn't understand the concept of like what a monster is or ugly. He even puts Gugu's mask on and just opens it, says ugly. It's a cute little moment. But yeah, I think it's nice, because I mean, even leading to the next scene, Gugu's very comfortable being with Ushi, and says, well, we're both monsters, let's stick together.
Exactly. And ironically, he did get the life he wanted, but at the cost of what he feels is his place in society. He views himself as a perpetual outcast, and sadly, there seems to be some truth to that going forward. But
the cost of his humanity.
Well, I mean, that's what he thinks, but we'll come to see he's perhaps the most human of basically everyone in the show. So next scene, speaking of family, Pyorin asks about what they'll do with Fushi. Gramps says he doesn't know, but maybe he can cut off his head and make some special booze with it or some shit. I can't remember, because he's immortal,
Fingers.
But Pyorin brings up the idea of selling him, and they keep on making air quotes jokes. But Gugu immediately objects. He's saying it's screwed up, and this upsets him greatly. He says he wants him to be a part of their family. He sees Fushi as his younger brother. So in his mind, he's already he tries making them out to be a family in his mind because he wants to see the best in people, and he desperately wants a family, and he's willing to try making a family work with even these fuck ups. So
Right. Yeah, and this even leads into like the scenes that follow, like if you want to get into it, because I mean he explains to Fushi like what what parents are, asks about if he has any siblings, and gives that. I mean, like it's very clear. It's exactly what you said. One of the things he values the most is having a family and having those bonds and connections.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to skip over that because during when Gugu was trying to teach Fushi to work, he does bring up the idea of family and parentage. Fushi, of course, doesn't know any of that. He doesn't know where he's from. He doesn't have any family. He says he's jealous of that, though. Gugu is jealous of that because you don't have to lose hope, because he experienced that loss of hope with his brother abandoning him. So
Yep. Very very
so
hard-hitting
sad.
shit.
It's so sad.
It is. It's so sad.
And this is why I say he's perhaps the most human character, because despite all of the horrible things fate has in store for him, he never gives in to despair. He always tries seeing the best in people. And
well, he continues to move forward in spite of it, and it's very strong of his character.
And despite the resignation of seeing himself as a monster, he still wants to dream, and he still tries making a path for himself. And I just feel so bad for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's poetic in a way. I mean, he hasn't resigned himself to his fate, even though he's desperately looking to it to like restore those bonds and like attain, I guess what could be said is his ultimate dream is having that connection, having that family that he values so much.
So next, we see Reen show up at the shop, and a very nervous Gugu comes to greet her, and she says she's looking for something healthy, inquiring if it'll help about the wound that she gained 3 months ago, because apparently she still has a large wound that hasn't completely healed yet. Gugu, of course, is smitten, as he always has been, with her, and this is where they really go the full extent of getting the maximum mileage out of that mask and using it for its maximum effect. But he says that when asked about his helmet, he says it's to attract customers, kind of like he's a mascot or something for the business. She finds this amusing. And then she notices Fushi. She bashfully asks for his name, much to Gugu's dismay, and then just starts asking Fushi a whole bunch of questions because she immediately has a crush.
Fate strikes again.
Yeah. Yup. So Gramps comes by later to say Gugu's time dejected is time well spent. It makes you that much more of a cultivated human being. Embrace the heartache and become a good man, Gugu. And this is where he kind of ends the episode inspired and begins working out and tries improving himself despite, all of his adversity. So, any closing thoughts on the ending scenes or the episode as a whole?
Man,
yeah.
You want to talk about giving Gugu a proverbial kick in the nuts one after the other.
No shit. Like, I really like Gugu, but apparently not as much as like Fate likes fucking him over.
Yeah, man. Again, it's just so sad. But yeah, I mean, I see a lot more development between Gugu and Reen going forward, and especially between Gugu and Fushi. So,
right.
This last scene with Gramps, though, I mean, how do I say this? Despite his machinations and despite his completely amoral, eccentric nature, I do think it's worth noting that he does have some wholesome wisdom to give, even if I am reading it in the most insidious way possible.
Because, I mean, what he's saying is true and genuine, and like there's value to what he's saying, and there's clearly, it's what Gugu needs, but there is a detachment with that. Like, having Gugu's best interest at heart is not what I glean from this, in spite of the wisdom of his words.
Yeah, no. I think the word we need to focus on is cultivated human being. That's kind of what I... Anyways, any parting thoughts, Rob, or you ready to move on to the next episode?
Oh, I think we can move on. Like I said, Fate's just trying to fuck Gugu out of everything, and fuck Fate.
Yeah, indeed. So, moving on into episode 8, we start with Rin stating she wants to live there because of her obvious crush on Fushi, further illustrating her privilege and background. So Gramps later tells Fushi not to reveal his abilities to Rin, and we also learn Gugu is anxious about her coming to live there. He doesn't know how he's going to feel with her around constantly. And this is where we kind of have a small scene with Gugu testing Fushi's transformative and regenerative abilities. So he begins by slashing him. He quickly heals. And this is where he replicates the knife after getting slashed. Because earlier he shows that he can replicate that spear from when he was stabbed in the prison. This is where Gugu makes the observation that it's when he gets hurt that he's able to replicate these things. That's not quite it, though. It's really when he feels stimulation. But pain is an obvious, powerful stimulation. So he tries burning him to see if he can make fire. Fushi is getting visibly upset at all this testing, and spoilers, he's not able to make fire. He's only able to replicate the stick the fire was on. So later, Gugu comes to Gramps to ask about healing Rin's wound, but he stops him during their request to remove some, what we learn is highly distilled alcohol from Gugu's body. He just kind of unplugs the cork, and I want to say it's the nose area or mouth. Yep. I don't know. Anyways,
it's the nose.
Okay, so he takes out the cork, he just sticks this hose in him and just starts pumping out the alcohol. And Gugu's like, what the hell did you just do? What is that fluid coming out of me? And Gugu's shocked, and Gramps is saying, I added an extra organ. I always wanted to see what would happen when you keep liquor in a human body. It's a rarity.
God damn it. God damn it. Like, now I don't like booze, man. Like, you...
He's like,
this is the...
Yeah.
This is the end result of that sus alert.
Yeah,
those alarms are officially set off.
The only keeps growing. He's saying it's a rarity. I don't even plan to sell it to the enthusiasts. When asked why he did it, he says, well, a manifestation of humor and inspiration. You could say I followed my curiosity, saying this in the utmost cheerfulness. So, Gugu's appalled, understandably, and runs away. And as Fushi notices, he just yawns and gets back to resting. Like, Fushi just wants to keep being comfortable. He's content at the moment. So, any thoughts on this before moving forward? Because this...
You start, Rob, but you better believe it.
Fucking even Rin's like, you're awful. And it's just like, I fucking agree about her interpretation of that. Like, god damn it. Like, I wanted to believe that we had like a decent person outside of, Gugu, but like,
at this point,
because that shit was dirty. It was dirty, and nobody wants to go after Gugu, and it just increases like the shit list for Rin, because this is, in my opinion, the second time that she's fucked him over. Like, well, shouldn't somebody go after him?
She's
and
concerned,
they're like, well, why don't you go after him? And she's like, well, I don't know him that much. And it's like,
I mean, let's give kudos to Gugu, though, because I would have ran the hell off if I was him. So, I mean, very clearly, understand what he's doing. But
it's very
you can even see, like, he's hurt. He's like, man, they're not even trying to get me back.
We increasingly see the emotional realities that Gugu faces really does not factor into either Gramps or Piorin's relationship with him. And in this scene with Rin saying they're terrible and that no one really actually wants to go look for him.
Yeah, like Gugu runs off visibly upset. No one's coming after him. But meanwhile, yeah, I agree with you, Rob. Like, Rin has a few points deducted off her. Like, she has very vain reasoning for not going after him, just in spite of quote unquote, like not knowing him well. And everyone's just
Mhm.
trying to push off the responsibility of getting him back, but no one's committed to it. Yeah, these are pretty shameful of these people, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and we get to the point where like he's going back to his old job,
Yeah.
and we get his old master, which kind of fucking slays me like emotionally because like his old master actually seems to be like a decent person, but
only-
not
Like the only other decent human being.
right, but not his
Mhm.
fucking family.
No,
Not his
unfortunately.
fucking family. Nope. Sean, you want to touch base on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so he does go back to his old boss because he noticed no one came after him, and he tries going back to his old life. He does get back. He does get some work back with his old boss. And one evening, his boss, because I think he pities him, invited him over for dinner. And this is where we see him offer Gugu to live at his home with his family, but his son objects immediately, saying they don't want like a monster with them. And this is where he says his son's right, and he reveals his face to the shock of the entire family.
Look at my face and see if you can love me. Big
Exactly.
sads. Big sads.
And completely to his boss's credit, he still runs trying to bring him back, saying, "Don't hate my family for this. We'll try to make this work." But he says it's okay. He doesn't want to be a burden to them.
I'm smiling
And he
right now.
leaves.
Sad face. I'm not smiling, Gogu. I'm not smiling.
Yeah,
Can I be a human without the mask? Yes, you can, Gogu. Yes, you can.
Yeah, I'm definitely air quotes smiling right now. So the other workers, so when he's walking away, some of the workers that were nearby during the day, making fun of him, they run by, remove his helmet, and throw it in a nearby body of water. Gugu goes to recover the mask, but then he laments to himself, "Can't I be human without it?" And then he just throws it back in. And this is where he walks to the market the next day, demasked, to absolutely everyone's horror. And
Now, with this in mind, this is the third instance where we see Gugu fight against his fate. He's trying, in each of these scenarios, he is trying to take matters into his own hands and accept the cards he's been dealt.
Yep.
Like, what a lad. But man, even with this new burst of determination and like motivation to just live in spite of what other people think, he just can't, the shit just does not stop coming.
Yeah, he has an extremely strong spirit and will, but yeah, as you say. So he walks to his boss, and his boss asks why he removed the helmet. He said it was stuffy. He accepts this, even though he wants Gugu to
Succeed.
Yeah.
Essentially, like
Yeah,
I mean,
his-
like the bot master. Essentially, like we don't get his real name, but like legitimately, I feel like he's a decent fucking human being, which
he's
you
a
don't
truly,
get
he's a
a
truly
lot
decent
of.
guy. Absolutely. So next we see Fushi trying to do the chores in Gugu's stead, but he's clearly shit at it. And
He's very shit.
he asks Piorin to teach him these, but she tells him to just go find Gugu.
He even
And-
tried to bribe her like Marge would, which was fucking funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cute.
And then we see Reen come up to her asking about it, and she says, "I can't spoil him. He has to learn how to be human and quickly." So next, we see Gugu continuing to work the fields to everyone's mockery and disgust. And after work, when he goes back to his own little tent, his boss's son comes by, splashes him with water, and tells him to not come to work anymore, saying he doesn't want to...
Chankun is a bitch, and I want to reach to the screen and fucking slap that little shit dude. Like, God.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Saying to Gugu, "We aren't a freak show. Don't come by anymore." And this is where we see him kind of like hiding in the bushes the next day, contemplating whether or not he wants to come to work, and just decides, yeah, he's right. I don't want to be a burden on him and his family, so he just walks away. He's slowly running out of money. He thanks his boss to himself silently. It's having people like you around that prevents me from growing crazy. But he's running out of money, and he's considering selling the ring. And when the pawn shop or whoever it is he tries appraising it at is shocked by the ring. He knows, yeah, this thing's worth money. So he just takes it back and he continues contemplating. Then he sees his brother kind of pass out in an alley, clearly beat up, malnourished.
Emancipated.
Yeah. And this is where he just thinks to himself, well, I'm never going to be able to make proper use of this because I'll always be a monster. So he just gives the ring, puts it in his brother's hand while his brother is still groggy.
Why would he give that to Shin? He doesn't fucking deserve it. Oh, no, I got so angry.
No,
I got so angry.
He doesn't, but his reasoning is, well, there's an off chance he could actually become a decent human being with that money.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is he doesn't see himself as human.
Exactly.
Self-loathing. Self-loathing.
He has such low esteem in himself that he's like, well, there's an off chance he might become a decent human being. I'll never become a human being. Because at this point, he's basically just accepted himself as a monster.
Gugu is too good for this fucking world, man.
He is.
Like, seriously.
He absolutely
This is the Nikola Tesla to the Thomas Edison story, just all over again.
Well, let's not lionize Tesla too much, but I definitely understand what you're saying. And he's definitely
in a spiritual sense, if you will.
And I will agree, he's definitely way better human being than fucking Edison was. But moving along, he goes back to his little tent. It's raining out. It's representing him at his absolute lowest mental state. This is where a couple guys bag him because they think, they're traffickers. They'll think he might make a good exhibit in a freak show or something. And this is where Fushi rescues him. They're forced to drop the bag. They're about to confront Fushi in his wolf form, but then he turns into Oniguma form, and then they understandably panic and run off. And then then Gugu takes note saying, "Aren't you afraid of the forest?" He said, "I am, but I came." He said, "I learned.
I can't grow up without you."
Yeah, he said, "I learned I can't grow up without you." And this is where Fushi happily says, "You're so much more awesome than when you're a monster. Hooray for monsters." So,
Gugu. You said Fushi.
Sorry. Yes. Gugu. So, yeah. Any parting thoughts on the episode? I know we kind of rushed through that last bit, but any thoughts?
Yeah, ends on a much more optimistic tone. I mean, once again, we see the bond between Gugu and Fushi grow even more because, the two quote-unquote monsters, they seem to have a lot more humanity and what we value as people more than these other, like, shitbags around them.
And Gugu will definitely bring out much more humanity in Fushi, for sure.
Right, but we definitely see that, Fushi... I would say, unlike a lot of people who kind of, over time, they get a sense of what they value in themselves and other people. And to a lot of people, it's not worth chasing after or recovering someone else if you...
Mm-hmm.
I think what I'm trying to say is, I think with this episode, what true intrinsic value people place on each other, Fushi being, this sentient orb and with the experiences he's gained through different people who have impacted him in a great way and stimulated him, he has grown a very human way of thinking. And because right now a big motivation for him is to grow and to learn, he finds this value in Gugu, which pretty much no one else does at this point. And
Sure.
in a very poetic way, it becomes a lot more human than the other humans around him.
Well, right, like...
It's very touching.
Fushi understood that he could not grow and learn to be a human without, Gugu. So he went out of his way to confront his own fears and trepidations in order to bring Gugu back to the fold. And, let's just be real. Gugu is best boy. Like, this world does not deserve somebody that is kind-spirited and just pure as Gugu is. Like, I can't find any faults with him, and he's just, god damn it, he just got dealt such a fucking shitty hand.
Just a boy trying to make the best of, his fight against fate, but man, he's got that spirit.
Surely
right, he's got that spirit. Like, he hasn't been broken despite everything within fate trying to break him down and break his spirit, and like he's still gung-ho with we get that other side of him with the existential crisis, but like at the same point, like he's still sitting there trying to make the best of his life, and I fucking respect that.
I will say, going forward, after these episodes from here on, I do see Gugu probably having among the greatest impacts on Fushi. When Gugu inevitably finds the culmination of his dream, when, I hate to say it, but at some point he will inevitably pass on, and I'm still spoiler free past episode 8. So I don't know how or where these events will take place, but I do see Gugu having a very irreplaceable impact on Fushi and his development to be more human.
Absolutely. So with that, any final thoughts on these batch of episodes in general?
I can't give any final thoughts here because I know what's going on. Zach?
Overall, very positive. These past 4 episodes are very strong, each one in their own right, but I'm very captivated following the events that Gugu's taken place, even if it's admittedly trying to fight against his massive struggles. But man, what a character to root for. This is a very well-written, strong young boy, and we only want the best for him. He's clearly fighting a losing battle, and a lot of what's happening to him is out of his control, but man, definitely rooting for him. I'm looking forward to a lot going forward with Fushi and Gugu and just everyone else in the cast right now, except for Booze Man. Fuck him.
Yeah, I mean, from these episodes, I think it gave a lot of needed context about who Fushi is, what his place is in the world, and gives him a powerful new companion in Gugu. And Gugu is so important to Fushi because he is the first person Fushi has acknowledged as saying he can't grow up without. He's the first person that he's able to express that to. So,
right.
Yeah. But with that, I think we're about out of time. I do want to say real quick, this is just a personal nitpick on my part. I said in the last batch of episodes from To Your Eternity, I ascribed the village March coming from as being primitive. That doesn't sit right with me personally. I only really noticed it after I was editing the episode. I don't like ascribing that label to other cultures, despite how technologically, I guess I meant to say relatively technologically primitive. Culturally, that's not a label I would ascribe. That's just my own personal nitpick, something I wanted to address for myself.
Right. I think Rob and I share that sentiment as well. That's not the kind of attitude you're trying to portray either.
Yeah. It didn't stick right with me, but I just felt the need to say that. But with that, I think we're out of time. So to wrap things up, be sure to tune in next week for our discussion on episodes 5 through 8 of 86. Feel free to give us a follow on our Twitter at 444pod, all 4s numerical, to receive any news or updates regarding the podcast. You can also feel free to email us at 444podc@gmail.com. That's 444, all numerical, pod, letter C, @gmail.com, with any questions you would like to see featured on a future episode. If you like what we're doing with the podcast, we would love it if you could like, comment, subscribe on your platform of choice, as this really helps us gain further traction and visibility with the show.
Show to me. Also, get ready, because 86.
Yeah, Rob watched ahead an episode. Me and Zach have been holding off dutifully.
I couldn't wait, guys. I couldn't. I was literally looking for light novels. Shit.
I appreciate.
Be sure to tune in.
Relative turnaround on that, though. All right, but with that, thank you for joining us today. I hope you'll have a great week and join us next time as we discuss the second round of episodes 486. Have a good one, everyone.
Take care.
Be safe. Be well.